Today, we're going to talk about what B2B content creation actually looks like behind the scenes. So the tools, the workflows, and AI shortcuts that take an article from the blank page to publication.
My specialty is helping B2B scale-ups grow from local to global brands and expand into the US market using content marketing and strategy. My specialty is helping B2B scale-ups grow from local to global brands and expand into the US market using content marketing and strategy. I actually use Miro a lot of the time for strategizing, for the strategy part, for brainstorming, for collaborative with my clients. And then also SEMrush. I find that the hardest part is actually getting the expert to get in contact and reserving time with them because those experts are usually busy.
Today, we're going to talk about what B2B content creation actually looks like behind the scenes. So the tools, the workflows, and AI shortcuts that take an article from the blank page to publication. I have Livia with me. So thank you for joining this chat. Would you like to give us a quick intro about yourself, Livia?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Sophie. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I'm Livia. I'm French and American, but based in the Netherlands. And my specialty is helping B2B scale-ups grow from local to global brands and expand into the US market using content marketing and strategy.
Perfect, short and sweet. So, Livia, welcome to this chat. You write and strategize about B2B content in complex spaces like, for example, data privacy. So let's skip this content is king talk, which has been out there for ages. The first question would be about your tech stack. So what software stack do you typically use from getting an article from the blank page to published?
So it really varies per client, because sometimes I use my own tech stack and at times clients invite me to theirs. We'll start with, I actually use Miro a lot of the time for strategizing, for the strategy part, for brainstorming, for collaborative with my clients. And then also SEMrush, although I haven't used the newest release with AI, so I can't comment on that. But I use SEMrush for keyword research, competitor research, to also be part of the strategy. And then Google Drive and Google Docs are my best friends, really. So yeah, that's kind of where once I do the execution, that's where everything resides, organized folders, Google Docs, and then I'll also usually create a Notion calendar. And it's a page where we can also organize, see the workflow and whatnot, so all under one page. So that's my tech stack, pretty lean. But then sometimes my clients will onboard me, so of course there's communication. But I've used, what was the one? I think it was Jasper that I've used. I've also been embedded in their CMSs, so I've worked with WordPress, I've worked with Wix, I've worked with HubSpot. I think those are the three big ones. So it really then, and then I've also worked in Asana, ClickUp, so kind of also then whatever my clients prefer.
Okay, so you're quite versatile depending on what the clients are using, then you adapt to that tech stack. Okay, perfect. And you deal with subject matter experts when you write your content because it's technical content. So can you walk me through the actual workflow from getting an SME subject matter expert to review your draft without turning it into a complete chaos of Google Docs with comments where you don't know where's the beginning, where's the end?
I am guilty of the Google Docs. So the workflow, typically I find that the hardest part is actually getting the expert to get in contact and reserving time with them because those experts are usually busy. So that's kind of the hardest step, that once we have, we'll do it, I'll send the questions over in Google Docs and just so they already have a basis. Sometimes they'll even give input of hey, I wouldn't use this term, or actually, this is a trend that's coming up, maybe best to we should cover that as well. And then yeah, interviews just filmed on Google Meets, and then I can take the transcript. And then yeah, I just write it up in a Google Docs and we'll share it with them, but give them only commentator access. So you can't edit, oh, I don't like the term magenta, I prefer deep purple. No, you can tell me, hey, actually I don't agree with what was said here, or you've misunderstood this term, or, whatever, but high level edits. But I am pretty guilty of the Google Docs. But yeah, the workflow stepwise is, yeah, get the step one is like organizing the time for the interview. And then step two is actually doing the interview. And believe it or not, step one and two are actually a lot tougher than you would imagine. And then yeah, step three is writing, step four is editing. So my, in that sense, pretty lean. But I stick to Google Docs because you can see all
Okay.
the edits and I find it to be easier to work with than Word.
And that works for you, or do you then have also feedback via Slack, email, and it gets
No,
complicated?
typically with the two, especially like one client that right now I'm doing a lot of interviews for, it works. Like it's very streamlined. There's one folder and we put V1 and then with edits we'll put like we'll do a copy of like we'll rename it like with edits and then like final version. But no, it's very streamlined actually. And most of the time because I'll have one designated contact person, that does make it easier to kind of like 15 people are not giving me their opinion. It's like, well, I'm partnering with Sophie. It's Sophie's client I'm interviewing, or it's Sophie's friend or whatever. And so because you're kind of the middle person, you're like, well, I get feedback from you. I get feedback from your friend. And that is it. It's a closed loop.
Got it. So you basically have to make sure who does what from the
Yeah.
beginning to
Yeah.
remove any friction.
But yeah, so that's where it's more of a process because I've really noticed that the hardest part is actually getting the SME to give time. And
Mm.
so for me, what I've done is I actually always say, whoever's your contact person, like with a client, we would often do partner case stories, and they always had like a designated partner agent within the company. And so I
Right.
would always say, rather than me reaching out, being like, hey, I'm from company X, they said you okay to do a partner story. So here I'm reaching out, when would you be free? It's like because I'm already, I'm already a partner organization. I'm an outsider from their inner circle. Like I'm the bottom of their to-do list. I'm the bottom
Mm.
of their email list. And so I have the person that they know reach out and put us in contact via email with a calendar link already. Like, hey, you okay to partner story? This is Livia. She'll be writing the partner story. Here are 3 slots that we could do it in. Any of these work for you? Because they're more likely to respond to the person they know.
Right. Right. Awesome. You already shared a little bit about your daily execution. Let's talk about a little bit more about the workflows and also failures, which is always an interesting part in the day-to-day of a professional. So could you walk me through the pipeline for the last big content piece you published? So from the very beginning until the end, which were the tools you touched? How did the process look like?
I'm trying to think. Because I'm now thinking of like various white papers I've written for clients. But there it's actually less about tools because white papers, it's a lot more about research, and like really needing original research. So for multiple clients, the process pretty the same for a white paper. First off, definitely it's a shared collaborative idea. Like usually it's not me coming up with a white paper on my own because a white paper is such a key component in a content strategy. We've already agreed, okay, Q1, we're focusing on this white paper of this topic, and this is obviously going to be then a lead gen, and so blogs stem from that and whatnot. So it's a collaborative idea process. Then from there we set deadlines, and the deadlines are actually more for the client because the review part is often hefty, and then the design as well. But then pretty much once we've agreed, I will always start with an outline, just to be sure, hey, we're on, like what you think is X could be what I think is something a bit different, especially in highly technical industries. So I always send first an outline of like, this is what we would cover. These are the things already with some research. Notebook LLM, I think is what it's called from Google. I love that. That is my tech stack because that's where I'll save everything that
Yeah.
I've found useful. And then, right, you can interact with the chat and be like, cool, like I saw somewhere there was a stat that said 48% of X does Y. Can you
Hmm.
find that for me with the source? Or I see here that this source is about, this specific topic, but I'm having a hard time understanding the essence of what they're trying to get me to say. And so it really helps analyze the content, but it doesn't add any external sources. It really keeps it you
Hmm.
know, what it has. So I think it helps with preventing hallucinations because it's really, you've given me these 10 sources. We're just talking about these 10 sources. So that's a must at this point for all heavy research. And then from there, again, Google Docs, and writing it up once the outline has been approved, and then sharing it with the client, sitting down, going through it, but on a high level. Once again, we're not discussing whether you prefer mustard yellow or, the word regular yellow. Like, we're discussing more, okay, we'll see this stat is actually way more important, or we have our own research that, so going through kind of a lot of that.
Hmm.
But then you also usually partner with the designer, and that's where things can get a bit interesting, because they'll do the design either, I mean, mainly Figma, but I've had it in the past. I don't even remember what they used in the past. It hasn't been Canva, Figma, because at least that's the latest one I remember. So they'll do
Hmm.
the whole outline based on all the branding. Oh, not Photoshop. What's the one that and one of the Adobe tools that I've now forgotten the name of, but
Yeah,
it's another.
InDesign.
Yes.
Okay.
Also have worked with InDesign, whatever the designer prefers, whatever. So yeah, that's whatever their choice. But so, because then it's about, okay, like, great, we have this fabulous 20-page thing. We also need to make it look pretty and on brand, and it needs to at least fit a bit. So then we'll usually collaborate. So sometimes, often also during the time, I'll come up with ideas also with the client for some visuals, like this statistic we should highlight, this statistic, we can pull from here. So we're, obviously typically a white paper mentions somewhere in there a case study, so we could do a visual of that and show XYZ. So there's already some visual ideas that make comments on all of that. And also if we have already specifics of insert it here, I'll make notes in all of the Google Doc. But then, yeah, sitting down with the designer, seeing, okay, well here, yeah, I see the text is a little bit too long, like just by like 3 words, can I somehow shorten it? And going through the nitty-gritty like that. And
Hmm.
then it's a finished product, and then it's about distributing it. So,
Yeah, we'll
there's
get into the
also,
distribution part,
yeah.
but from the moment it's published, and the
Yeah.
starting point, is there any like specific bottleneck that you feel like the process always slows down at this specific point?
Yeah, but it's the review part. It's the getting time, because it's such a hefty document, by the time it's written, sometimes it's 20, 30 pages. That's not a, hey, let me quickly read it on my lunch break. Like,
Hmm.
oh, you wrote me an email, let me just quickly scan it. No, we need to sit down and make sure this makes sense for our customer, what point we're trying to make. So the being able to sit down with the client and getting them to do the review is actually usually the bottleneck.
Okay, well, it's good to know to just have that in mind whenever you
Yeah.
produce a larger content piece.
Yeah.
Moving into, yeah, a little bit like the failures and sweat and maybe even tears that you've had in the past. Do you have any story that you would like to share about something that completely went wrong, a content launch or any CMS update or, anything that broke and you were like, no, why did this happen?
I mean, they're like early on in my career, we were doing a website transfer, I think, like, like from one CMS to another, and updating the whole website and new branding and whatnot for this client. But I mean, I wasn't involved in the high level planning. This was a whole, I mean, there were 10 people on this before the whole branding and all of that. So, it was a company-wide effort, but it's true that like the WordPress we use, well, there you go. The CMS we used was WordPress. And I do love WordPress because it is great in certain ways, but I also think WordPress has a mind of its own. And so like, yeah, we had like, I mean, a lot of it was manual work. Like we did have to go through and literally duplicate pages and the content and the new format and all of that. And like, I think we had done a whole section, and it turned out that WordPress had put them under a whole different section and a different URL, and we'd hit publish, and it was all very soft launch. Like it was all published in a test ecosystem. So luckily we weren't botching the entire live website. But like there was more than once where we had duplicated everything. We're like, great, like that section's done, but because of elements and weird like kind of the site map and how WordPress decided to do things as you added literally thousands of pages, you'd realize you're like, that is not where it should be. This is all wrong. This is 25 pages
Wow.
that I just have to redo. And so, like I said, it was slightly lower stakes because it was a test environment, but it was a lot of work because a lot of it was manual. And yeah, felt like you had very little control over if
Mm.
you're uploading that many pages. Like sometimes, yeah, oh yeah, all of these blogs are now under services, and you're like, no,
Okay,
that's
so there's a
no.
reason for the test environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, because this was a massive website, so I mean, it would not have ever gone live, like unless it was 95% of the way there. But it was very, like, they like learned a lot about how, I think they were thinking it'd be super easy because once you got to duplication, the hard work was done. That we had the components, we had this is just the boring easy part. Like, let's have fun, like we just do the duplicate. And it's like, no, the duplication was a mess. It took 3 times as long as it should have, and like the site, and then you had to rethink the site map sometimes because it didn't fully match up. So it was yeah.
Hey.
When you try and build a house, anything that can go wrong typically does. And it's like, oh, we'll be done in 2 hours, 3 days later.
Well, it's good that it happened early in your career, so you have that learning to just avoid any like big launches and making sure that yeah, everything is
It's just it
tagged
just
and
if you ever want to move one environment to another, if you think it'll take you 2 days, budget a week. Like that's kind of what I've learned. Whatever you think it is, double it.
it usually these migrations take a lot longer than you would expect. So yeah, good learning to always book in some more time.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Um, great. So, just to wrap up, like the daily execution part, and you already mentioned, once an article is published, if everything goes well, the next part is distribution. So, when you hit publish the article, what happens then? Is there like a step-by-step workflow that you have, to distribute it across LinkedIn, email, newsletters? And do you use any automation tools to improve that process or accelerate it?
Yeah, so I mean, distribution is a core part of strategy, and so that's something I do for all my clients if possible. And it all depends on what they have, right? I mean, I work with a lot of scale ups, so they typically do already have something, whether it's a LinkedIn page or an email. So we'll work with what they have, because also a lot of it is like there's no need to add more noise, right? There's no need to add more channels just for the sake of it. And the two most typical ones at this point, especially in B2B, are LinkedIn and email.
Hmm.
So far, I've never done TikTok content for my B2B clients. That's still, but so yeah, distribution wise, so yeah, from there, always share. Well, depending on the blog and depending on how many blogs we're publishing, you don't always share every single blog via email. Like for one of my enterprise clients, they publish so much, they're not going to share every single one. They'll share more like signature pieces. But LinkedIn for sure, you can always find ways of, like, that just gives you fresh content. So it pretty much always goes on LinkedIn, but it fits into the established cadence that we already have, right? So 2 times per week, 3 times per week, we don't have to push it out ASAP. Cool, the next post is Thursday. Well, that's already been written, but like we can do it next Tuesday. Um, Definitely you can do it more than once, right? Like you don't publish once and oh my God, like millions of people know it. So you can definitely recycle work and recycle posts to share it again. And then within that, any automations. I've worked with HubSpot for scheduling LinkedIn posts and social media posts and newsletters.
Hmm.
I did really like, it was quite nice. And I know that there's lots of automation for social media that's quite easy. The only downside I find is that when you schedule posts, even on LinkedIn, but even through like HubSpot or whatever, that typically it's harder to tag people. So if I want to be like, oh, thank you so much, Sophie, for having me, half the time that tag won't show up. And so then you have to go and be like, well, I was trying to leverage, each other's audiences and kind of tag you so you could engage with my content.
Hmm.
So that would be kind of the one thing I've noticed that kind of happens if you're not, I mean, the platform likes for you to be online when you post.
Yeah,
But
I recall that happening to me as well when I wanted to tag, like schedule and tag people,
yeah,
even in the LinkedIn environment. Sometimes they're not
yeah,
showing up, so I don't know why. And when you use tools like also Hootsuite or Sprout Social, sometimes the format kind of broke.
Oh yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had that because I've used more HubSpot recently, but I do remember using, yeah, Sprout Social a couple years ago and being like, this is not how it had looked when I wrote it. This is a bit
Yeah.
weird. Having to
Yeah.
go back in a few times and edit, but this was a while ago, so
Yeah. And yeah, for me as
hopefully
well.
there
So
have been
maybe they
updates
fixed
since.
it.
But so actually, yeah, not a lot of if when possible, right? Like it is quite easy when you're in the mindset of the blog to then I find write multiple LinkedIn posts, like write the email blurb because you've just kind of you're still in that whatever topic.
Hmm.
And so then it's easy to also then schedule those. Same thing with a newsletter. Like I've used HubSpot and MailChimp for various different clients, and
Right.
it's way easier to then be like, cool, like now we can send it out. That's ready for Wednesday.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So moving from the daily execution part into topic everybody's talking about, AI reality versus the actual friction. So what works, what doesn't. So you mentioned AI before, that you use it. Where does AI fit into your, like daily writing stack, workflows, and where do you think it's completely useless?
I feel like it's all the hype, but yeah, for me, I find that AI is a great brainstorming partner. So like sometimes, I'll think of like if I can't think of quite the right word for a title or even a sentence or whatever, I'll put it in and be like, I keep thinking this or this. Can you find me like 15, 20 alternatives? So I use it as a like, and then from there, maybe one of them and then with what I said works well. So I use it as a brainstorming partner. I use it like I have used it sometimes once for a client. I had to generate a detailed brief outline, like an outline for a brief they could continuously reuse. So I used AI to help with that based on I was like, cool, they have these requirements, but I also think they should include this. So like, work with me. Where I think it fails is writing. Like I would never be, okay, I have a blog, I need to write about consent management, write me, now 2,000 words about what is consent management. Like it's like it doesn't even if you were to give it the tone of voice and whatever, I've just noticed tried, obviously I've tried, it just doesn't meet for me the brand voice enough. And then a lot of especially my enterprise clients do often require research, and a lot of the times the research it just cannot do. Even when
Yeah.
I've tried Claude, I've tried ChatGPT, I've tried Gemini. So I was like, oh, Gemini, it's Google, maybe is more connected.
Hmm.
But I'll be like, cool, I need, like, it'll be like, well, McKinsey says 53% of the population is happy. Cool, find me the McKinsey link. And it'll not be able to get me the actual McKinsey link. It'll link to 404 pages. It'll link me to then Google to have me search for that statistic. I'm like, you can't cite McKinsey without giving me a McKinsey link.
Hmm.
So for research and that type of thing, I find that it still is not able to directly give you source to number. Um, and it's not able to write. So I use it more as a brainstorming partner of like, like they want me to write, oh, this CTA that needs to link to my conclusion. Well, this CTA is very different from my conclusion. Okay, well, I could talk about, and then, okay, well, I could mention, okay, can you help me refine? Well, what is the bridge between topic X to lead to topic Y CTA? Is there something I'm missing in the explanation? I could mention A. Okay,
Hmm.
smart. I will now. So yeah, brainstorming partner.
Yeah, so let the writing still be done by humans,
Yeah.
unless we see any improvement in the next
Yeah,
month,
pretty
year.
much.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're seeing a lot more AI slop, right? Like it's
Mm.
just,
Yeah, like the top of funnel content, I feel it's just like flooded with AI content. And you can
yeah.
identify like the emoticons and, like the typical stuff that AI content looks like. But
Well, and
then,
I mean, maybe this is as a writer, but I really pay attention to words, right? I mean, obviously. So,
mm,
and I really noticed that with some sentences, and there was always poor writing before, right? It's not like poor writing never existed. It's not like we've never seen a website full of buzzwords, but you really notice that like with some blogs that are, yeah, more top of the funnel, super basic, right? A green plant, like describing something like that, like the sentences, like there's a lot of filler words, there's a lot of sentences where you're like, what is that sentence? Literally says nothing. You've strung together a grammatically correct sentence that adds nothing in this
Mm.
introduction. Like it's, you start to pick up on like, so did somebody write this and they, it was somebody that's never written before, or is this just AI generated? Because like for such a basic question, you're like, screw
Right.
it.
And it makes sense, you as a content writer person, that you identify
Yeah.
this probably way faster than the rest of the population. Do you
Yeah.
use any paid version, by the way, of these
No.
tools? No. I
No,
mean,
I
as
don't. I
well.
don't have any subscription to any AI models. No. I
Mm,
mean, I guess I have Gemini because it's embedded in my Google Pro suite. So
right.
I have Gemini Pro. I don't really know. I don't know the difference between a basic and the pro one. I use like because Gemini can't write, so I was kind of
Mhm.
hoping that it would be better at research. But like I said, it's still not able to give me coherent, stacked, clear end source. So I don't really use Gemini.
Yeah. Well, if it still does the job for a brainstorm partner, then
Yeah, for that, I use Claude more. I find that Claude
okay.
is a bit more, especially if you say, like, well, I want you to act
Mm,
as somebody that's in the industry or as a content writer, or even like I've sometimes used it to brainstorm ideas for my business from a more strategic level of like, well, I have this idea, thinking this, can you poke holes into it? Kind of try and shred it pretty much and see like where it stands. And I
mm.
find that it's better versus ChatGPT is very much a yes man of like, oh, you want this? And sometimes I'm like, no, I need somebody to push back, in fact.
The people pleaser,
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT is such a people pleaser. And like it takes it to extremes, like please, push back a bit. Then it's like, or please be a bit more gentler, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, Claude's a bit more steady.
Mm. Well,
That's
that's interesting, actually. Yeah, what you're saying. And do you use a specific prompt or, like shortcut that actually helps you save time in your day-to-day work?
Not really. It's more like, I would say like the typical sentence I would put in AI is, help me come up with X alternatives for X. Like I said, when I get stuck on a word because I'm like, I've said this very dumb word, but something very small 3 times, and I don't feel like all of the other acronyms, like I've said however 3 times in the last 3 paragraphs, it feels very repetitive. And I don't want to use but, and yet doesn't feel never, like help me so that's probably one of the most basic prompts I use. Don't really use it a lot to save time. I have used it also to help me rewrite emails. Yes.
Mm.
To sound a bit more XYZ, professional or whatever. Um, but yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you know if your clients have like specific prompts or shortcuts they use?
No, I'm pretty sure at least, especially like the two my two biggest clients at the moment, I know are pretty. I mean, I don't know what they use it like. Maybe they use it for SEO or whatever. But I know in a lot of ways they're not anti AI, but like it's very much like for one, they've created their own GPT, like so it's within their ecosystem.
Mm.
Um, but like the other one, I think is very much like no, we're trying to stand out from AI and really try and create
Right.
like interviews and quotes and infographics and have unique angles.
Hmm.
So I don't think they've really they might use it more for prompt engineering or like, maybe from a coding side or whatever, but I
Right.
have no clue about that.
All right. So wrapping up the AI part, is there, like a scenario where you actually use an AI tool for content and the result was just so bad that you needed more time to then fix it? So kind of
Yeah, I mean,
around.
absolutely. I mean, mainly for research. Like, I really think I'm still sometimes so baffled that like AI pulls its information from the internet. So I'm like, you must have all the sources in the world. Like, if
Mm,
I ask you for Mackenzie said, and I have sometimes probably, and I have stupidly tried to do this a dozen times thinking, well, no, maybe it's me. Maybe if I change the prompt, maybe if I like, to me, research should be where it wins, right? It's connected, like, and like, ultimately it would have just been easier if I had probably Googled like Mackenzie 54% and whatever word in quotes and try and see if I can find it because like it would give me a link. That's a 404. So I'm like, hey, that's a 404 page. Oh, you're right. Here's another link. It's a blog. That blog doesn't link it. It just says it. I'm like, no, I need an actual, so, you know, like, and you'll go through and I'm like, I've actually done this for 45 minutes and gotten no source. I should have just Googled it myself.
Okay,
And I keep
so
trying. And
your
I've now understood
resources.
that it doesn't work. But I have tried a stupid amount of times to get, because I just don't understand how this is not where it wins. But yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's something that will evolve at some point because it keeps getting better. So yeah, but at this point, it's good to know that it will save you more time if you do it on your own.
Yeah. Good old
Yeah.
fashioned desk research is still popular.
Perfect. Moving into performance numbers. So let's talk about the numbers behind content pieces. So when you analyze how a content piece performed, do you have a specific dashboard you look at? What are the metrics you care about? And is there like a specific metric that you would recommend any B2B marketeers when they're in content analyzing performance that they should obsess about, and others that are maybe complete garbage?
So there's not one size fits all metric. It really depends on the point of your content, right? So with one client, we were trying to get them like really boost their visibility, and the whole point of the content was to like attract a certain market and really just grow their visibility. Like they had absolutely no blog. We were trying to
Hmm.
really start not just because, and that meant it was quite heavy on sales. So we were trying to down the line get inbound leads, but at first just even get visibility, being ranking for the right things. And so for that, we had created a Google Analytics dashboard with like, new number of new website visitors versus returning, time spent on page, scroll depth, click-through rate, location of the visitors, how they found us. So we're really focused on, are they finding us and are they obviously then interested, right? I mean, if the scroll depth was 3 seconds and they weren't going very far, it's like, well, cool, clearly that didn't resonate. So it was really focused on visibility. But for another client, we were focusing a lot more on conversions. And this was their dashboard. I'll be honest, I did not build this, but I know that they had a dashboard with Google Analytics, but I think also a few other things. And they could tell, like, okay, based on, you know, like when they had a whole site map in a way, right? Of like, okay, you know, like Sophie entered on a blog and then she went here, and your average person enters here and they went there, right? And could see the patterns, the usual browsing patterns. And they were very focused on expanding in the US. So is it the right audience, but also conversions? And they noticed, for example, that with the blogs, um, a a lead was, or a website visitor was 15% more likely to convert after entering the website from a blog than they were from any other website page. But that was all like, you have to build the right dashboard for that. So it's there's not one metric that I would say, oh my gosh. It's actually like a combination of things. I mean, I'm gonna sound cliche though, as for metrics you shouldn't look at, which is right, basic vanity metrics, especially when it comes to LinkedIn company pages. It's a lot harder to gain traction nowadays. Personal brands are bigger. And so, you know, just because your LinkedIn company page isn't growing at the speed of light, or isn't generating lots of engagement because people are less likely to engage with brands nowadays, especially ones that are less established. Um, that doesn't mean you should pivot and throw out your whole
Hmm.
strategy. So, you know, 3 likes on a LinkedIn post is not the end of the world. 3 likes repeatedly when you have an audience of 2,000, well, maybe you should look at how to engage them, slash, is there a lot of bots or counts that are not, you know, at all your audience? Because there's a mismatch if you have such a high audience and such low engagement. But yeah, vanity metrics, of course, they boost your visibility, but at the end of the day, they don't pay the bills.
Hmm.
So you know, they're not, that's not worth reconsidering everything if those are not the highest.
Yeah. So basically, you don't have like one specific kind of benchmark metric. It's more like the combination of those you just mentioned, and then excluding more the vanity metrics
Yeah.
to
Well, and
avoid.
also like focusing on the bigger picture instead of one. So I mean, of
Hmm.
course, there are always going to be blogs, unfortunately, that tank. Like that, you know, not every blog, not every single blog that you write, especially if you know, start publishing 100 plus, is going to be on page 1 of Google. So there's definitely looking at, okay, which ones can we optimize that are on page 2, 3? Okay, is there a pattern amongst all the ones that aren't ranking and that nobody's browsing to? Maybe it's a specific
Yeah.
topic, maybe it's a specific format, but like, not panicking, like making sure you focus on the bigger picture always rather than like, oh my God, our blog of yesterday like tanked. Okay, I mean, give it time. All of your other ones are doing well, like it's the bigger picture rather than
Hmm.
focusing on one thing.
And you mentioned how your content influenced actually like lead generation. Do you also have insights on how it influences then pipeline? So the next step?
I mean, I know it's led like to increase conversions for sure. Like I have, there was for one client when I first started with them, we did a lot of optimizations, and so I know that it led to, and just by making sure the content's up to date, matching, the new, because their persona was outdated, like where their persona
Hmm.
had been updated, so their content was a bit outdated to match their new persona as they grew. So making sure the content was now a bit more relevant, a bit less jargony given their new target audience, and had offered included like easier offers, right? I mean, everybody has a lead pipeline, and especially in B2B, you can have your end offer be 20K. You probably have a starting offer or a free thing. And so including a bit more of that free element throughout did lead to, I think, was it 150, 200 increased conversion rates just from like even one or two blogs because
Wow.
yeah, you can just like if like the power of optimization and really like targeting it right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's and then at least then they're in the system. They've started that that small
Hmm.
free offer. They've started their free trial, whatever. So yeah,
Well, thanks
I
for
hope that
sharing
kind
because
of
I think a
answers
lot of
your
people
question.
are wishing that one specific metric or that one specific, like insight, but it's never that easy. It's always like looking at the bigger picture and trying to understand what's happening actually. So that will give you more insights, but you also need a better understanding and more experience to actually know what's going on and to evaluate that.
Yeah.
So cool.
And not
Moving.
every blog is gonna, increase conversion rates by 200%. That's just not realistic either.
Yeah,
You
you
know.
have to also kind of manage expectations always
One,
because
because some blogs are going to be a bit more like thought leadership, and they're going to be
mm,
a bit less like for one client, they have a magazine as well. Well, that's not at all about conversions. That's about thought leadership. So like, like we're not inputting CTAs in the middle and this and that. It's way more about, okay, look, like we're in the space, we're creating a whole like section about like within this umbrella space where like then each issue is about a specific different like subtopic, and it's more about visibility. So
right.
you're not even going to look at conversion rates as a number.
Yeah. Well, it's a good piece of advice. Those benchmarks you just shared. Moving into the last part of this conversation, let's talk about industry trends and then really like the hard lessons that you've learned and you can share with us. So we already talked a little bit about how the internet is flooded with AI content, and specifically the B2B content industry is, like getting noisier and noisier with this probably more like top of the funnel content. But yeah, like what's your view on what's going to happen in the next 12 months? Where are we heading? Do you have like please give us your completely unfiltered view on on what's going on based on your experience and your perception of how are things going now, no?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's there's dream world outcome or like preferred, but I think reality
Mm,
opinion is that like yeah, I think AI slop and AI generated content is going to rise in the next year. Like I think still a lot of places are going to be like, you know what, I can just quickly do this with AI. I think at the same time in the next year, we're going to start finding that there's a line of like AI slop. This could be in content, but also even in general. Like I've heard that too many AI tools, there's a study that I think Harvard did or somewhere that like, in fact, when you have too many AI generating tools or AI tools in your company, you're in fact slowing down and it decreases productivity because like your employees become almost like parents having to be like, well, no, but this one said this and now you have to cooperate with this one. And so like, we're going to also start to see, I think, I hope, the limitations of AI. So as we all start like using it for everything, be like, oh, it's not always better, or yeah, more is not always better. Optimizing everything and no human involved is not always better. So I think there's going to be that fine line that's going to be discovered. But I still think in general, there's going to be lots of content that's going to get published and pushed. And so with that, in order to stand out, you're really going to have and master the basics really well, which is a really good branding, positioning, point of view, tone of voice, clarity on your target audience. And, you know, I almost hope that like the brands that'll stand out are really going to prioritize quality over quantity in such a distinct way. It's like, cool, we know exactly who we are, we know exactly our values, and we are not going to try and pump out 100 blogs a month in order to be seen. And if that slows our growth, then so be it. So that's what I would hope. But yeah, I think that the basics of, you know, target audience, positioning, branding, messaging are going to become way more important. And I do think that like more and more people are going to see AIs. Like I think already the trend of AIs coming for our jobs, people are seeing that's not the case. I think that's going to keep growing of like, oh yeah, we really do need people definitely in certain places to check it. Like it's a collaboration, it's a tool, it's not a replacement. Like, you know, yeah, with the research part, clearly AI can't do it. Well, we need a person to do the research. So I think that we'll get more clarity on that as well, that, you know, that
Mm.
a human is still very necessary. And in fact, where can the human do it better and work with the tool better rather than just kind of putting more tools in?
Right. So you're not giving into this concern that people, especially writers, will get laid off?
No.
No.
I mean, if I look at it, if I look at it now, I'm like, it can't do my job. I've tried giving it brand guidelines, be like, cool, like write me this blog with specificity because I know that like, but like I've never seen it do a good job.
Yeah.
And it can't do research, which is also a key part. So I'm just like, well, then what good are you? So, you know, like, so no, I mean, especially
Mm.
for quality content, which at this point, I guess, you know, some companies are going to focus a bit more on quantity. For those that are not and going to be focusing on quality, humans have to be involved.
Well, it's good, I think, also for our listeners to hear that piece of reality check. Someone who's in the field who gets her hands dirty every day and seeing like, okay, this is not going into the way that this will substitute us. It's more like, yeah, like maybe extending our skill set. I mean, writers. I'm not a writer,
No.
but yeah, I mean, marketeers, other professionals. It's not just in marketing, right? It's in all other sectors
Yeah.
and jobs to in engineering, as you said at the beginning. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens in the next year.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting, definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, like the typical question, what advice could you give a junior writer? A little bit of like harsh advice to survive in B2B tech right now, because it's obviously something that it's a field where competition is rising and it's not easy to stand out. So yeah, is there any advice you can give the juniors?
Yeah, and I would almost address it more probably to people that work in-house because obviously as a business owner, you know, it's not easy to give business advice, but typically we always ask like, what would you give other freelancers? But just
Mm.
other writers, I would address more writers that are in-house is like you for starters like reading and writing, like, you know, keep practicing your craft, keep reading different things. You don't have to always read tech things, but like honestly by exposing yourself to different forms of media, you 100% get more forms of inspiration. But also like you kind of have to make your own opportunities in order to grow. So if you're assigned, cool, like you're a content writer and you're writing 3 blogs a month and doing a few other things and working with the social team and whatever, don't hesitate to be like, guys, I want to try, you know, I would love to try writing Instagram captions. Guys, I would love to try, like, there's this PR we're doing. Can somebody walk me through the PR, like, you know, template, how we write it? Like, ask questions. When I was starting off on my internship, I had a fabulous mentor, but I asked her so many questions and I would just probably annoyingly so, but she luckily gave me all the time and space in the world. But I asked her so much and be like, oh, what does this person do? Well, how does that work? She's like, well, go ask them for a demo. Like, you know, and so I learned more about sales, about the design, about this, so the Figma. And so even though I'm not a designer and I might never be, you know, never say never, but there's a high chance, still learned about like, oh, well, what do they think about when they create an outline, a template, a this, a that, you know? And so like further enriches my experience and my knowledge going forward, because then it's never just about writing. So
Mm.
yeah, ask questions, be annoying, and create those opportunities. Like, oh yeah, like how is that done? Well, you can go over there and ask him. Go over and ask, and like, oh, can I get like you guys do sales of using this? Can I get a 30-minute demo as to how that works? Like, make your own opportunities happen, because that is really how you then also enrich your experience and see the amount also that writing touches, because it touches everything.
Mm. Love that because there's so much cliche advice out there. I don't know, did you ever hear any advice that was given that you think was completely BS?
Trying to think. So it's been, I'll be honest, I've been 7, 8 years in the field now, so like it's been a while. I just think that a lot of advice is very surface level. So like, yeah, I mean, of course, like I'm trying to think like a lot of the advice that came to mind was like owner advice, where I'm like, yes, I have heard advice for business owners that is complete BS. But in terms of writing advice, I think it's just that like some of like the whole, you know, read and write more seems very basic, and it's not enough to then get you to the next level.
Mm.
So that's why I said, of course, I'm going to say this, because yes, I mean, if you read different forms of media, you do get exposed to different words, different ways of writing, but practicing writing is not enough. Like you need to forge your own opportunities. It's nice to
Yeah, you
practice
need
writing.
to do that extra step, and that only
Yeah.
comes when you expand beyond your knowledge zone, your comfort zone, and
And
so.
beyond your scope, like, you know, we're
Mm.
writers. Great. I wrote my blog, I wrote my LinkedIn post, you know, I'm done for the day. It's like,
Mm.
cool. Like, go ask the sales team what they're doing. How do paid campaigns work? How does it, maybe you discover you love Google Ads, and, you know,
I think that's a lesson for every professional. Like if you just stay within your niche and your skill set and your scope, then yeah, you're not going to understand the impact also that your content might have or how that the
yeah,
skills from others might feed back to you. So
yeah,
yeah, no, that's true.
yeah.
Awesome. Coming into the very last question, Livia. So looking back into your whole career so far, is there like a single most important lesson that you've learned about how doing content right? I know it's like very specific, but do you have any, like lesson where you say, okay, this is something that really taught me what it meant to produce content in the right way?
It's not a one moment, but more just the over the years, the realization that like sounds, I mean, this is going to sound cliche, but that writing is way more than writing. And so like, cause I've had clients who were just startups, who were just figuring it out and didn't have a lot, you know, and so we're trying to make like, hey, you have an audience, but you don't have branding. But like when a client like has a very clear branding, a very clear tone of voice, and a very clear audience and a very distinct personality, like it's so much easier to write. And so it just shows the importance to me of like the basics of like because you're
Mm.
never just writing. Like the writing is for someone to do something. And if you don't know what that knowledge is, like that information is, how are you supposed to write well? And so it just shows the power of the like the foundations that we all preach about. Have a target audience, define how you want to sound. It's like, yeah, we've all heard it, but it's true, because it makes then also like if I give that information to a writer, a junior writer, if I can give it clearly and succinctly, it's going to be a lot easier for them to write. So like the power of the background, because you're never just a writer. You're trying to get the reader obviously to think differently and convince them to take a next step, especially in content marketing. Right? At the end of the day, we're selling something. Let's not pretend that, you know, we're doing this. I'm not writing about what is a green plant out of the joyfulness of my heart. I'm also trying to sell you a green plant, right? So yeah, it's the power of the basics is so important for writing.
Get your basics right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Like it's
Yeah.
like there's so much that goes under powerful writing.
Mm.
Like that's almost just the end result. Like I mean, I've made a LinkedIn post about this saying I'm not just a writer. I'm somebody that asks questions. I'm a researcher. I'm somebody that's going to dig into things. Like the writing is almost the final draft is
Mm.
actually just the deliverable you get. But before that, there's a whole onboarding.
Hmm.
where I ask you all of these questions, because that's going to make the writing 100 times better.
I love that. To finalize the chat, is there anything that you would like to share at the end, or is there a place where people can learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, always happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. So my name, Livia Hirsch, can find me on LinkedIn. And then I also have a website, liviahirsch.com. So those are but like for more direct, messaging and keeping in touch, LinkedIn is the best way.
Mm.
So yeah, if anybody wants to connect, always happy to chat. Very chatty person. So those are the best places to find me.
All right. Thank you, Olivia, for this very chatty chat and full of insights. And to our listeners, if you found this useful, please follow us, tag us, and yeah, see you next time.
Thanks so much for having me.